Stand by. Ready to go.
Terry, are you ready?
I am, thank you.
All right, great. All right, welcome everybody. We are going to start our meeting off, call our meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the
to
flag
the flag
of the
of the
United
United
States
States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
stands one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Born and unborn.
All right, so our first item this evening is our consent agenda. Does any council member wish to take an item off of the consent agenda? I'm just going to go through the list as I've been going through on these Zoom meetings. So Mr. Lima,
I'm all set, Matt.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
All set.
Ms. Lawler.
All set.
All right, so I'd like a motion, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Jill Lawler.
And is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor? We'll start with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Items number 6 and 7, we obviously will have to come back to because we have the 8 o'clock hearing on the budget. So we will go to motion item number 8 is a motion to approve a 1-year extension of the annual preventative maintenance agreement for instrumentation control program and SCADA equipment system from Electrical Installations Incorporated in the amount of $10,800, water $3,600, wastewater $7,200, and at their quoted hourly rates. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, and the initial comments from the council, starting with Mr. Lima,
I have none at this time, Matt.
Mr. Murray,
I'm all set.
Mr. Pugh,
No comments.
Ms. Lawler.
No comments.
All right, is there anyone from the public?
Nobody from
Dan?
the public.
All right, so I'm gonna call the vote. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. The next item is item number 9, a motion to approve, ratify, and confirm that the local portion of fees for building permits required to construct proposed improvements to the treatment systems, buildings, and facilities at the regional wastewater treatment facility may be waived. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, initial comments from the council. We'll start with Mr. Lima,
I have none at this time.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
No comments.
and Ms. Lawler.
No comments.
All right, I'm gonna ask our moderator if there's anyone from the public.
Nobody from the public.
All right, all right, so I'm gonna call the vote on this. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima, name and
Richard Lima.
vote.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item number 10 is a motion to approve the bid for West and South Beach Cabana renovation project to the lowest bidder, Martone Service Company Incorporated, in the amount of $1,013,217. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
We're going to any initial comments from the council, starting with Mr. Lima.
I just want the public to be aware that, again, this is the beach cabanas. This does not come out of any taxpayer money. This is out of the enterprise fund. And for the people that do use the beach or go down there, the cabanas, this next renovation will be the existing 59, I believe. And once these are completed, then the cabanas themselves will be all set and done, and then we can move into another phase of beach projects and renovations that need to move on so that we're not getting behind maintaining the facility down there. So other than that, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Yes, I can support this. This is some that, I don't know. Those two sections, I think they've been like that for 75 years. Money's there. I calculated a recovery rate of 5 years. One of the few properties in the town that are actually making money, so I can support this. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Just a couple of quick questions, hopefully. It's about the funding, so it might be for you, Steve, when I get to those. I'm looking at the notes here on the blue sheet, and it does say that funding is available in the Parks and Recreation Capital Projects account. Funding for the additional $263,000 is available within the Beach Enterprise Fund. So is the Parks and Rec Capital Projects account? That's not the same as the Beach Enterprise Fund, correct?
That's correct. It's coming out of the Beach Enterprise Fund balance, from a fund balance. But the beach fund balance is part of the Parks and Recreation Department, so.
So the two different amounts that are being funded, those are both from the Beach Enterprise Fund?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. But they just are kind of segmented within that fund?
That's correct.
Okay, and then just so I know, because I don't have the full history of this over the years, the revenue that those cabanas bring in, does that stay within the Beach Enterprise Fund?
Exactly. So just to give you some background, they were all built in the 1980s. The original 24 units which were on the ground were destroyed in Hurricane Sandy, and they were rebuilt back in 2015. Actually, Modtone Service Company rebuilt those back in 2015 for $338,589. And so we actually like that model. They're all in great shape, and they've held up for the last since 2015. We're not changing the design of those the new 59. So Modtone actually was the low bidder out of 5 bidders, and the west and south cabanas were actually built. These 59 units were built in 1992, and so we haven't really put a lot of capital money into these other 59, these two sections, west and south, and so that's why. The 83 cabana units are actually taking in $207,500 per year before the beach even starts up. So we think it's a good investment. It's something that desperately needs to be done. The existing 59 units that were built in 1992 are actually built out of Phylon roofing and siding, and they absolutely need to be rebuilt now, or we're going to have to do it in another year or two. So this is a good price. I'd hate to see it, not do it now and keep on pushing it down the road.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. That's all good details. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Ms. Lawler.
I have no questions. It's one of those infrastructure projects we need to do.
So our enterprise funds and our management and some of our larger management funds have both capital and operating lines, just like any other of the regular departments. So most of this comes out of capital because this is a one-time. Capital is usually a one-time bigger infrastructure project. So that is the bulk of where this is coming from, but does come from the enterprise fund, which has a fund balance of over 2 million, close to around 3 million. Steve, is that correct? Give me the exact number on the enterprise fund balance.
It's roughly 3.8, but Chris can correct me. I don't have the latest. It's around 3. I have 3.835, but it could be a little bit right around there. I'm sure Chris will correct me. I'm usually pretty good about keeping track of this, but I haven't got the latest figure from her since it was audited. So we're right around 3.8 somewhere in that figure, but it's very, very healthy. And as you may remember, it was depleted after Hurricane Sandy because we had to borrow from that fund balance, and we've been able to recoup that, in a very short few years.
Great. Yeah, my number was a little low. All right. I'm going to ask the moderator if there's anybody from the public who would like to weigh in on that.
Nobody from the public.
All right, so I'm going to call the vote on this. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
and Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Next is a motion, number 11 is a motion to approve a victualling license application for Olivia Wilcox doing business as Faith Mason at 1004 Boston Neck Road, Suite 1, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to local and state regulations. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Any initial comments from the council, starting with Mr. Lima?
I have no comments, Matt.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
I guess I'll just add that this is going to be located next to Gansett Poke up on Boston Neck, which opened up a couple weeks ago. I think it's French vegan. So if anyone's interested, check it out. It's right up in the Bonnet Plaza across from the gas station. So good luck.
Ms. Lawler.
The only thing I want to add is a clarification to Terry. This is just confirming that they're sharing a space with the restaurant that Jesse just described, correct?
That's my understanding, is that the license that the council approved for Michelle Frank doing business as Gansett Poke was for the same address and the same suite number. So we did confirm that with the applicant for this license, Olivia Wilcox, that they are sharing space.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I'm all set. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. That was an important point. There's the same location. So usually we see these are different suites and they're kind of working together, but these are actually, it's the same location, these two entities. So it's a unique situation. All right, and I'm gonna ask the moderator if there's anyone from the public.
Nobody from the public.
Okay, so we're going to call the vote on that. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item number 12 is a motion to approve the use of the Kenney Bungalow without fee by the Narragansett Chamber of Commerce in partnership with Mike Bryce Studio to conduct a virtual art show June 19th through 21st, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved, Jill Lawler.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Discussion on this one, because it comes from a town council person. I'm going to actually go to Jill first to present the item, please.
Thank you,
Ms.
Matt.
Lawler?
So this item comes after a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce. I've had the chance to speak to a couple of council members as well. Obviously, this COVID-19 has caused disruption for our businesses in this town, the state, the nation. And one thing that I would like for Narragansett to do is to take a look at event venues that we have that potentially we could open up to our local businesses to give them a helping hand during the time when they really can't have outside events. This one in particular is an art festival that's held every year in Veterans Park. It's an outside event for 2 days. And right now with the governor's orders, they cannot conduct this event. As a matter of fact, I read either yesterday or this morning on Go Local Prov that there was an art festival in Providence that needed to be canceled because of restrictions provided by the governor. So in speaking with Peg Fredette from the chamber and a few of their members, they brought an idea to me that we could actually mimic that is being done by the Westerly Chamber of Commerce right now that will work within the guidelines set upon by our governor for the current business atmosphere we're in. And that is to have a virtual art show. So what will happen if passed by the council tonight, which I'm hoping will, that the art show will take place virtually like we're having right now, that there'll be no more than 8 people in the bungalow at any given time, that each artist will have a period of time to be able to show their works and describe them. and then people can contact the chamber and provide bids and sell the works. Important to know that as far as what the town would do, the only thing we would do was to actually provide the bungalow as a place to have the project done. We'd have nothing more to do with it. The chamber, as well as Mike Bryce Studio, would conduct all of the actual sales of the products. It's my hope too, since these obviously are people with affluence coming into our community, that they'll may take the opportunity to go out to one of our restaurants after they pick up their piece of art. And I'm hoping we can have some type of a billboard there or some type of signage that has all of our local restaurants that are open and are ready and available to have them come for a great meal. So that's the concept. I've asked Peg to dial in tonight in case you have any questions as far as a procedure. Handle them. Thank you.
Great. All right. I'm going to just get initial comments from the council members first. I'm going to start with Mr. Lima.
Yeah, so anything we can do to help business, and I appreciate the fact that the chamber has stepped up. You know, any support we can give them in the community, along with the businesses, and like, you know, Jill mentioned, it's up to the businesses to be able to move forward, and at least they have a location, so they'll figure out the rest of it. And hopefully this is a start of, you know, something that could be successful in the future. But good idea. I think you have to put your foot in the door and try different things. So I like it.
Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I have no problem with this, but I think the Narragansett business policy is selective. Here we have a virtual art show that we're letting in for the bubble in mid-June or third week in June. And a couple months ago, we had a road race in October where businesses are really short on customers. And we tried to solicit $10,000 from them to try to shake down. So I think the Narragansett business policy is very inconsistent. So, but I can support this. I just want to make that point.
Thank you, Mr. Pugh.
I like the idea. I think it's definitely a creative way to go about trying to salvage, you know, something for the summer. I do want to just double check. This is the same group of people, not the artists, but the organizers that do the summer one at Veterans Park, right? Is that correct, Jill?
No, it's a different people. The actual, this Mike Bryce Studio does not do that. I think it's the Rotary Club that does the one in Veterans Park. So it's a different organizer, but it would be probably the same group of artists that do it in particular. So what the chamber mentioned to me was they have a member of their board of directors that's a local artist. So she would reach out in conjunction with Mike Bryce to identify artists from around the state who might have interest and pick and choose and get them in for us.
Okay. Do you know if, sorry, you know, we had talked about this earlier. These are just some new questions that have come up. Do you know if Mike Bryce, is this going to be like a pro bono thing in terms of the organization, or will there be a commission for each sale kind of?
It's my understanding that some type of a fee will be given to him. He's actually providing a service. And for the local artists, they have a stash of artwork that they wouldn't be able to sell. So it's a way to get our local businesses to tap in. I know, Jesse, you and I spoke about other things that I'm hoping to bring forward at a next council meeting about other businesses as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much, and maybe perhaps the chamber at some point, I'm sure they wanted to wait for tonight to see if we'd approve it, but he's working, he'll have some type of a fee.
Okay, all right, I got it. All right, yeah, but I think it's a good idea. So, you know, kudos for working on getting this put together, and I definitely support it.
Thank you.
All right, Jill, anything additional from you?
No, nothing, but there's some things that we'll be working on next week for other businesses, for restaurants and for retail, and stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have a conference call at the end of this week that all council members will be able to participate in. and we can take a look and see, what can we do as a town to perhaps relax some regulations to make sure that when we get out of this COVID-19, that we don't have a bunch of empty storefronts open. This is something that South Kingstown had done about a month and a half ago, which I thought was a great idea. And I'm glad to have the support of the council. I appreciate it. And I'm hoping that we can really help out some of our local businesses by hearing from them, what is it that we can do? So thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask the moderator if there's anybody from the public that wishes to weigh in.
We have one person in the public, Meg Rogers.
All right, so I'm going to ask her to state her name and address for the record.
Margaret Rogers, 68 Earls Court. Good evening. It's a lovely idea, but I do have a question about the participants. It seems to me that a group of artists paid a fee to attend the traditional art festival that would be hosted by another group, I believe the Rotary Club, at our Veterans Park. And I always worry that this could become an I know a guy type of event where Mr. Bryce apparently has been placed in charge of this. Is he the petitioner? I don't know. Is the chamber the petitioner? I don't know. And I don't know whether those people that paid the fee with the expectation that they would be able to show their artwork in the Veterans Park will receive first priority, or will they be out of the loop? Because it seems to me this is going to be selective in terms of, a little bit clicky. Like if I know the person, you're in. If I don't know the person, you're out. So I would just like deference to be paid to the people that perhaps had the expectation that they could show their art rather than sort of the I know a guy insider type dealing that we're all so accustomed with. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask the moderator if there's anyone else.
We have one more, Dr. Alba.
All right, Dr. Albert, if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I want to applaud all of you for supporting the businesses in Narragansett. I think that's very crucial at this time, and I want to give a hats off to all of our business people during these hard times. And we just have to make sure that we reach out to all businesses and support all programs that are trying to help out, and so that the town is not going to appear biased in any way. So I think Patrick brought out, and what Meg brought out, that we have to make sure that we are proactive and reach out to all businesses in needs, from the people who are at the beauty parlors and the dentists or whoever it might be. I was just wondering, I know Pawtucket, the mayor, said that he reached out to the governor for funding about the CARES Act and whatnot. And this is probably not going to be, maybe not the right time to bring this up, but I was wondering any kind of monies that might be becoming available from the state to help small businesses that are hurting. But thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask the moderator if there's anyone else.
We have Bretta Combs.
All right, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, hello, my name is Bretta Combs. I live at 5 Crane Terrace in Narragansett.
Yep, go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. So I just wanted to share with the committee, in speaking about small businesses, that once long ago, we did have an economic development committee, which I believe Ms. Lawler dissolved within the first month of her term. And that committee had done, a really nice job doing a business survey. And that business survey, we had over 50 small and large businesses in the town of Narragansett provide us with information and data. Those businesses were nonprofit, for-profit. We asked a series of over 20 something questions regarding their experiences and how well they were doing trying to function in a small town like Narragansett, many of which were really seasonal businesses. And I think it would behoove the committee to take a look at some of that information and consider. We did a very thorough investigation. We spent an enormous amount of time vetting the questions that we were trying to answer. We didn't simply look to see what other towns were doing. We spent time to really look at how the questions were formulated and what kind of information we were hoping to gain from running the survey. I still have that survey data because I was part of the committee at the time. And I do think that when we consider the crisis that we're in right now with COVID and the challenges that many businesses are having, you know, it's not just understanding how do small businesses thrive or even large businesses thrive in the town of Narragansett? How does any business thrive in the town of Narragansett? And is there perception that this town is business friendly? I think those are good questions that you should be asking outside of any pandemic that might be happening. That is part of your charge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? I'm gonna ask the moderator if there's anyone else who is would like to weigh in.
That's it.
Matt, perhaps Peg Fredette from the chamber would like to speak on a couple of those questions that were brought up just now. I think she's on.
Oh,
Yes,
okay, I see that. Does the moderator see that?
I do. Yep.
All right, if you could, Peg, when he gets you in, please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, am I in?
You
I
are.
can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Peg Fredette, 110 Gibson Avenue, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Thanks, everybody, for your open-mindedness regarding this particular idea. It started out in Westerly as just that, an idea, and they're on week 4 of it, believe it or not. So they were able to allow many artists of all kinds to participate in this as the weeks went on. So that's the first thing. The Rotary Club did in fact cancel their art show. We received notification of that quite a while ago at the beginning of the crisis. So certainly that's where some of these artists have displayed, and they're very thankful that they might have an opportunity to salvage this art show in a new form. And this is the new form that we'll try to do the best we can in a summer that we all agree is going to be sort of strange and different for us. In terms of, so to answer one person's question, the chamber is leading this along with Mike, who has had experience with the Westerly Chamber of Commerce. And then of course we have board members and other artists who were involved with the Rotary Club who are also participating and helping us in organizing this. In terms of Al, your feedback on helping out all businesses, I'm with you 100%. We're doing our best to try to touch base with the different businesses and find out what we can do to help them, whether it be help them with the PPE or help them out with the EIDL loans or the, just understanding PPP, not to be confused with PPE. So we're doing our best, but, and you're right, we really do want to really focus on all the businesses that are out there. We're more than just certainly restaurants and artists. And then lastly, Bretta, I totally am with you on the work that was done on the EDC. I actually was on the EDC during all of that work that was done on the character of the town and the importance of keeping our charm and businesses and so on. So I too have all that work that was done, all the focus groups, all the feedback, and I'm with you 100% that it's something we should not just put in a drawer and have it go away, but we should revisit it often, as is the case for many strategic plans that sometimes just get put in a drawer. And this one was very robust. It really did involve so many members of the community, and it was a very valuable thing. So thank you for bringing that up. I definitely will put my hands on it again. And just lastly, in terms of the CARE Act, we're hoping that more money will come our way. Again, we have helped many of our businesses with the various loans, understanding what they needed to do. We're now distributing PPE to our small businesses as they needed, anybody under 50 employees. And certainly if we're trying to get CARES CARES Act money for the chambers, as we were left out of the we're a 501c6 versus a 501c3 or some other 501c. So we're hoping that this time around, we may be able to get some financial help that we in turn can help our businesses. So hopefully that answers some of the questions that came up. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna, if there's no one else from the public, as the moderator.
No one else from the public.
All right, so any final comments from the council members? Mr. Lima,
I'm fine, Matt.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
No additional comments.
Ms. Lawler.
Just one addition, I just want to also compliment the chamber for making sure that they provided guidance to our businesses with procuring small business loans, PPP programs in effect. I know that Peg spent a lot of time making sure that the knowledge that was not always clear from the state and federal government was brought down to the local level as clear as possible. So applause to the chamber for helping us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that, Peg, you have that information from the surveys that were done many years ago as well. So that's, I'm happy to hear that. All in favor? I'm going to call the vote on this. We're going to start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, yes.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. I'm gonna, it's 8 o'clock, so we're gonna move to our public hearings. So before we get started on those, I'm just gonna make sure that our stenographer, Ms. Thacker, is ready. So I'm gonna give her a minute or so. And then when she's ready, if she can simply indicate
I'm
to
all
us.
set.
All set. Hello,
Yep.
how are you? Good. Nice to see you. All right, so our first item is going to be a motion to open and hold a public hearing on an application for the transfer of a Class B victualler alcoholic beverage license from Bam Kel Peg 1112 LLC, doing business as Buster Crabs Beach Bar and Burger Shack, to One Eye Jacks LLC, doing business as Buster Crabs Beach Bar and Burger Shack at Assessor's Plot IG, Lot 95, 265 Great Island Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Is there a motion to open this hearing?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor, and on this roll call, make sure to say your name and your vote for it and speak slowly for the stenographer, because the items on these liquor licenses are going to be, the stenographer is going to be following. It's very difficult to do that at home. So we're gonna, all in favor, I'm gonna start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. I'm going to turn this over to the applicant and his attorney, who I believe they are online and indicated that they were going to speak on this. Do you see hands raised for either of the Mr. Fays?
I have Ann Fay with a hand raised.
Okay, so Ms. Fay, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Are you hearing me? Because this is attorney.
Whoever, yeah, I had Mark Fay and Robert Fay signed up, but just state your name and address for the record. Who's coming on now?
All right, this is Mark Fay.
Great. All right.
Yeah, right.
Mark Fay
My
is
brother Robert's there too.
Great. Okay. Mark Fay, Mark Davis, just addressing Mark Davis. Mark Fay is an attorney, I believe. So we probably don't need to swear him in. Is that correct, Mr. Davis?
That's correct.
Great. All right. So I'm going to give you the floor, Mr. Fay.
All right. Well, my brother Robert Fay is here with me. He's going to be managing the business. So I think it's better if he speaks to the council.
All right. So Robert, could you state your name and address for the record, and we will have Mr. Davis swear you in.
Robert Fay, 27 Hillside Road, Cumberland, Rhode Island.
Great. Mr. Davis?
Robert, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm currently just finalizing my law enforcement career, which will end on Monday up in Cumberland. And hopefully within 2 weeks, we're gonna have Busted Crabs up and running again. I wanna bring back the Busted Crabs that I've heard about from 10 years ago. I'm not looking to make this a late night hangout bar. I'd like to make it very family friendly. We intend, myself, my daughter, my son are gonna work down there. My brothers, 2 of his children are gonna work down there. And hopefully if things work out, we'll also plan on eventually moving back down here. Growing up, my family had a house down in Narragansett. So that's where we stand. I'm very happy with the progress we've made so far. Local businesses, everyone has stopped in, very supportive of us. Town Hall has been fantastic with this. I have very limited knowledge in the restaurant business, and any question I had with concerning the business, people at the Town Hall have been fantastic. Any
All right.
questions?
All right, great. I'm gonna go through the council members if there's any comments or questions, but for the applicant, so we'll start with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, I'm all set, Matt.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
No questions. I guess I'll just say it's exciting to hear and wish you guys luck this summer. So thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, no questions.
Great. All right, I'm gonna ask the moderator if there's anyone else out there who was wishing to testify on this matter.
No hands raised.
Oh, yes, there is one. Do I have that?
That's Ann Fay who just
Okay,
spoke.
okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
And so that's, okay, so I'm going to take a motion to close the public hearing.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. And then I will look for a motion to approve this with the 4 conditions listed in the project summary. Is there a motion to that effect?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, any discussion on that? Mr. Lima,
I have no discussion.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
All set as well.
Ms. Lawler.
Good luck, One Eye Jacks. No, nothing else.
Thank you.
All right, Terry, is everything satisfactory on your end?
It is for me.
Right. All right, all in favor?
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Our next item is a motion. The next item was withdrawn, so I don't need to read that item. That was regarding proof properties. The next item is a motion to open and hold a public hearing on the application of Roy and Mary Jennings, doing business as J Cove for a new Class B Victual Limited alcoholic beverage license at Assessors Plat K, Lot 198, 1 Angel Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
UI.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion to open the public hearing approved 5-0. Roy and Mary Jennings are the applicants and have indicated that they would like to speak tonight. So I'm going to ask our moderator to see if they have raised their hands.
They have not, but I believe I found them in the list. There we go.
All right, Mr. Jennings, I'm going to have you state your name and address for the record, please.
514 West Nut Swamp Road.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Yep, just one at a time. I'm going to have Mr. Jennings just repeat that for the steno.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, Roy Jennings, 514 West Nut Swamp Road, Homedale, New Jersey.
All right, thank you. Mr. Davis.
Mr. Jennings, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, would you want to give us a brief summary of this, Mr. Jennings?
It used to be the old Serta Pizza building. And we're bringing it back to life. And we'd like to have a small bar that seats, I think, 12 or 15 people in there. Be able to offer wine and beer to our patrons that come in for the pizza and Italian food and seafood. Just bring some life back to that neighborhood.
All right, very good. Do we have Miss Jennings, did you want to speak on this?
No, that's fine. I'll be right on the side if he has any questions.
All right, great. All right, I'm going to just go through the council briefly on this for comments. Mr. Lima.
The only comments I have on this, when it was Serta Pizza or anything in the past, did they have a alcohol beverage license, and did they have a bar with seating?
No, they did not. No.
That was Mr. Jennings answering that, correct?
Okay. So you're gonna have 15 seats?
Correct.
In a bar area, and in serving the beverage of beer, is it gonna be draft, or are you gonna have bottles?
At this time, it's only being set up for draft.
Draft beer, okay. Okay. I don't have any other further questions. I'm fine.
Great. Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, I'm all set. Aye. Good luck.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm all set too. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
I'm all set. This was a 5-0 recommendation from the zoning board, so I have no questions. Thank you.
Great. Terry, is there anything that, okay, actually, I didn't go to other members of the public. I'm sorry. Are there members of the public, I'm asked the moderator, that wish to testify?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, great. So then I'm going to ask for a motion to close this public hearing.
Excuse me just a moment.
Yes.
So there's just a couple things. One of the things I wanted to clarify is that the advertisement had run with a DBA of J Cove, and the applicants have since submitted a written request that their DBA would actually be Hook, Line, and Pizza.
Wait, let me write that down, because we'll put that in the motion, right?
Yes, please.
All right. Cook, Line, and
Hook.
Pizza.
Hook. Hook, Line, and Pizza.
Instead of J Cove.
Correct.
Okay, what else?
So my second question has to do with the Rhode Island statute with regard to the residents on qualifications of persons who can hold a license. Rhode Island Title 3-5-10, I believe indicates that licenses can only be issued to citizens who are residents of this state. And there wasn't anything on the application filled in by the applicants that indicated that they were not Rhode Island residents. But the address that Mr. Jennings gave tonight is from New Jersey.
Right, so Mr. Jennings,
Yes,
and I may have to bring Mr. Davis in on this. Mr. Jennings, is any of the owners or people seeking the license Rhode Island residents?
no.
Okay.
We have a summer house.
We have a summer house where they're pretty much, 10 months of the year. But we don't have residency there. We own property there.
Okay, so I'm gonna circle back.
My daughter that lives there is a resident. She's gonna be managing the place.
Mr. Davis, I just want to, did you want to address the clerk's concern?
I agree with Terry. I wasn't provided with the application, but the applicant does need to have Rhode Island residents. I don't know what form of entity this is. Is this an LLC?
Sole proprietor.
So sole proprietorship.
Yeah.
Mark,
Yes.
Mark, couldn't we move forward contingent on the applicant making his daughter, who is a resident of Narragansett, the proprietor of this establishment? And approve it.
Well,
I think she'd have to, all right, this
Yeah.
is Matt speaking. I think she would have to, though, be the applicant for the liquor license. is
Correct,
Terry's
We
point.
can approve it tonight contingent upon them reapplying under her name instead of the parent's name. That way there, we're not, they're not gonna miss half the summer.
Mr. Davis, what's your thought on that?
I think legally they need to resubmit an application.
All right, so Mr. Jennings, it looks like if you do have someone in your family who can be the person making this application, who is indeed a town resident, that would be the ideal. I'd have to have you talk with our town clerk, who I think you've been speaking with throughout this process about that, and then would that be an amended application, Terry? So that would just be that one thing that would be changing?
Well, that would be my question, is if they could amend their application to add her as one of the license holders. So there would actually be 3 license holders, one of whom is a Rhode Island resident, and or she'd be required to get the BCI check and so forth to be in compliance. But is that a possibility, Mr. Davis?
I have no problem with amending the application, adding her on as an additional owner, and following the other requirements for compliance. I have no problem with that.
So then would they amend that, Terry, and then bring it back to us in 2 weeks with a third application, that one change, the third applicant? Is that possible?
Well, unless Mr. Davis objects, I would think that it would be possible, considering this hearing, that they could amend, the council could approve the granting of the license to the 2 applicants and the additional 3rd applicant, contingent upon all the usual state and local regulations. But that it would be, unless you feel that it needs to be re-advertised with the 3rd applicant.
So would that be tonight, though, or would her name have to be on an agenda for 2 weeks from now, or could we do that tonight?
I think you can do it tonight, Matt. I think we've done it many times where you approve something contingent upon subsequent action. So I think if you spell out the fact that the 3rd person, 3rd owner is a Rhode Island resident, modifies and submits the the necessary paperwork to Terry in a timely fashion. And once that's completed, it will be deemed approved.
And Mr.
All
and
right,
Mrs.
so,
Jennings, is that
I'm gonna-
satisfactory to you as the
Yes.
applicants?
That sounds satisfactory, yes.
Could you give us the full name of the third applicant, please?
Her name is Amanda Lee Jennings.
Okay, so we're gonna include her as a co-applicant, and she's a full-time resident, correct?
Correct, yes.
So we'll amend that. So we have that, we have the amendment of the name. Terry, did you have anything else?
No, the only thing you might want to clarify at this time, because it is a new license, you might want to get for the record what the applicants intend in terms of hours of operation and, whether or not they have any requirement for entertainment. Would be the time to set any restrictions that you might have on the license.
Do any council members have any restrictions they would want to place on the license? Mr. Lima?
I would just like to know, that's close to residential neighborhood as well. What's the intent for how late at night? I think, do they have a 10, an 11, a 9 o'clock? I mean, they're serving pizza, so people like to eat pizza late. It's a good point that Terry made is some pizza parlors are open 12, 1 o'clock at night. So they have any idea how late they would be serving that alcohol?
Yes, 10 o'clock.
10. So you'd be satisfied with 10 o'clock?
At this time, yes.
Okay. I think that just helps in case, anybody wonders, if people are going to be carrying on till midnight, 1 o'clock. So thank you for considering that 10 o'clock time.
And we don't plan on having any entertainment.
Yeah.
No, no, we don't see it happening. We just want to sell some good food and fill your belly.
Great. Wish you the
And
best.
then, of course, it would be subject to the conditions that were set forth in the special use permit by the zoning board, that the consumption of beer and wine is limited to the indoor dining area, that the project complies with all Rhode Island state building code standards and all local building code requirements, that all renovations are in substantial conformance with the floor plan that was submitted with their application. That there be no increase in capacity beyond what had previously been approved. And there was a butter notification in addition to the legal advertisement because it is a new license. There was a butter notification for the hearing before the zoning board on the special use permit. And the Jennings did another abutter notification prior to this hearing on the liquor license application, and no objections have been received.
All right, anything from Mr. Murray?
I'm all set. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pugh?
No comments. Thanks.
Ms. Lawler?
Nothing. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, so I've
So
got a
now-
list of those.
So now I tell my daughter she's an owner.
Exactly.
Matt, you gotta make sure there's no one that wants to comment.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to testify on this matter? As moderator, if anyone's indicated interest.
No one has indicated.
All right, great. So we are going to make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there someone who would like to make that motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. to close the public hearing. And now we're going to be looking for a motion to approve this application with the following amendments: that doing business as J Cove shall switch to doing business as Hook, Line, and Pizza. That the license for serving alcohol will go till 10 p.m. That there will be a third applicant for the license named Amanda Lee Jennings. And this is subject to the zoning board limitations specified in the with regard to the special use permit. Is there a motion to that effect?
And no entertainment at this time.
Correct.
No entertainment at this time. With those amendments, is there a motion with those amendments?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right. I'm just going to ask if there's any further discussion. I think we're okay. Does anyone have anything? I'm not going to go down the line. Okay, great. So that's a no for the Ms. Thacker. Okay, no one else was interested from the council. They'd already spoken. So we're going to call the vote on that. All in favor? Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye. Good luck, guys.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
And Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Thank you, everyone. And next, we have a motion to schedule a public hearing on the application of Captain's Deck LLC, doing business as Captain's Deck, for new Class B victualler alcoholic beverage license at Assessor's Plat IG, Lot 243S, 33 State Street, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Is there a motion to schedule this public hearing for July 6th at 8 p.m.?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All in favor? We'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. And I'm going to thank our stenographer, Ms. Thacker, for being here with us and being very patient through that process, and appreciate her being here. All right, next we have a motion to continue a public hearing on the. Have a great night. Thank you. A motion to continue a public hearing on the proposed budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All in favor? Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. As everyone knows, this is our second public hearing on the budget. We had our first public hearing on the budget last month, and in the interim, we went through and we had our work sessions on the budget and have made some changes. And so those are going to be presented by our finance director. So I'm going to have Finance Director Chris Spagnoli give us a summary of what some of the modifications are to the budget and where we stand, and what else we have to deal with tonight during the public hearing. So I'm going to turn it over to her for her presentation. Ms. Spagnoli.
Thank you, Council President Mannix, and good evening to you and council members and community participants. Before we get started, Dan, do you share the screen with me?
Yep, you should be all set.
Okay. How's that? I don't see anybody. Okay, do you see that?
Not yet.
Oh, okay, hold on. I have 3 computers here. Hang on, share screen. Let's try this. There we go. Okay. That's better?
Perfect.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that we received some new information from the state of Rhode Island today. And because of that, we had to modify the PowerPoint that I'm presenting tonight. Much of it is the same, but there are some minor changes. So first we'll start with what's notable in the budget. And just to recap, we had the decrease in funding for capital projects of 1.07 million, a decrease in funding for operating of 1.78 million. The tax levy at 2.50% excluding motor vehicles and 2.24 including the motor vehicles. We still have zero use of unassigned fund balance for the operating budget. And with the use of the fund balance reserved to cover the capital, that brings us down to about 11.75% reserve. Still 100% funding of the actuarial determined contribution for pension and OPEB. Level funding for the library, postponement of hiring for several positions, and that equated to about $216,000 worth of savings. And then the increase to the rental registration that we discussed during the work sessions. Some major changes from fiscal year 1920 to 2021. The total budget is 61.5 million, up 562,000, under 1% from last year. Tax revenue is up 1.4 million or 2.6%. Personnel is up $813,000. Capital transfer is down $270,586. School transfer is up $264,000 and debt service went up $10,949. With the town council reduction of 10% for capital improvement from the departments, it came to a little bit more than 10%. It wasn't exactly 10%. So IT reduced the fiber optics maintenance by 5,800. Police eliminated the animal control officer's vehicle. Fire reduced a vehicle. Engineering reduced a vehicle. DPW eliminated the reserve for the storm drains, 75,000, and reduced pavement management by 17,000. Parks and Recreation eliminated court resurfacing to 30,000 and eliminated the fence replacement for an additional 41,000. So right now that those changes impact on the taxes is the residential property is at $10.51 per thousand. And the commercial rate is at $14.18 per thousand. And again, the 1920 rates were $10.23 and $14.33 per thousand. The total tax levy increase of $1,402,747,000 represented a 2.24% more than the current year. We received this news today. The state released adjusted preliminary state aid amounts for 2021. So the meals and tax beverage, we had it budgeted at 731,437. I can't see the whole screen. That was reduced to $477,077. So that was a reduction of $253,667. And the hotel tax went from $278,120 down to $155,491. So that total reduction came to $376,296. So we have to figure out what to do with that shortfall. Obviously, you have three options. You can increase the tax rate, we can apply fund balance, or we can cut expenses. The town manager and I talked with departments this afternoon, and we do have some recommendations for possible cuts if you determine to go that way. The health and dental, I received the actual numbers for that. So with those actual percentages for 2021, we can save $57,761, and that's across all personnel costs. We've reduced the revaluation sinking fund, the 75,000 to zero. We had 0.5 FTE police. We had postponed that out through January before hiring. We've now eliminated that completely. That saves an additional 50,000. The DPW truck driver that Mike got last year, half the year, we now reduce that. So that's gone again at $92,800 savings. This, we have Veterans Memorial Park at $41,734. They could possibly fundraise, or we could postpone it. The total was $190,000. We could also go to contingency. It's $41,000, so it probably wouldn't hurt too much. Or also, there's conversations with DPW on another vehicle with DPW. So there's some options at that one. There was fire capital, 30,000 in the renovations and 10,000 in communications equipment, totaling 40,000. And the police capital radios of 19,000. And that would bring us to where we need to be with the additional cut that we received today. So after we discuss this, I guess we have the adoption of the town council budget by ordinance tonight, and then June 15th is the second reading and the adoption. I don't know if you have questions.
Well, thank you. That that news was something. So it came to our finance director pretty late today. So thank you for working through that, and thank the department heads for coming up with additional proposed cuts. So we'll want to keep that slide not up right now, but at your fingertips, the second to last slide that we exactly. So what I'm going to do is we have an open public hearing, so we're going to get to the public on this. Before that, if there's any initial thoughts from the council members, obviously we're going to come back and circle back on everything, but I'll go quickly through the council before going to the public on their thoughts on this before we go to the public. So I'll start with Mr. Lima.
Presently, Matt, I'll wait for the public to speak and I'll come back to this if I could.
Great. All right, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm good with all this except the Veterans Memorial Park. I think you should take that sum out of the contingency.
Great. Mr. Pugh.
Unmute, Jesse. Unmute. There you go.
Thanks. Do have a few questions. I'll ask them now. That way, if they're on other people's minds when they speak, I'll get it out there now. So for Chris, the preliminary state aid, did they give any information on, how solid that number is? Is that like, basically this is what you're getting, or is that this is a projection based on where we're at now through the year?
That's just a projection. There's
So
still a lot unknown. They haven't talked about motor vehicles yet, so there's still much unknown, but that's their first prediction that they've made in a while.
And that would be the year this is calculated on. Is it the regular calendar year?
No, that's the fiscal year.
Okay, for the hotel and meals tax, right?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. A question about the slideshow or the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Let me just find that page real quick. Sorry about that. The use of the fund balance to cover capital projects.
Yes.
How much was that?
The capital was 1.975 million. That's the transfer to capital.
From the unassigned fund balance, or?
Right.
Okay.
That's what always happens every year. Yes.
Okay, and that leaves that at 11.75%.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I just want to be clear on that.
Well, I just want to be clear too. Those slides I showed you were without the reduction of the $376,000.
Yeah.
So, with that, it changes a bit.
Okay. Okay. And then one question, do you remember offhand about how many registered rental properties there are in town?
I think it was 2,683.
Yeah, pretty good. All right.
Was
just
it?
about. Perfect. All right. I'm just doing a little bit of math with that increase that we're doing. So I just wanted to get that number. And then I guess my last question is, it says that we're level funding the library. So is that's based on, I guess, just last year's appropriation as opposed to what it's historically been at, right? Because technically it's funding.
Correct.
Okay. So that's more of kind of a slick marketing way to word it. Because last year was kind of one of those situations where it was kind of marketed as a one-time cut because of that reserve. Typically that budget would be 841 to the library, not the 400. So I guess technically it's level funding, but it's still obviously a 50% cut historically on what that library budget has been. So I just want to say that for the public, not really for you, just to make that clear, that we're not level funding based on historic numbers. But anyway, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
I just have one addition that I've reached out to both Chris and to Jim and Terry about. And I want first of all compliment all the department heads. This is always a difficult process, but under the terms we've been doing it right now, you guys have just done a great job. But there was a communication originally given by the South County Museum asking for a $5,000 allocation. This council last year increased their allocation to $6,000, which would be even funding with the Historic Society. Unfortunately, when South County Museum initially contacted the town, they asked for the former amount of $5,000. There was a communication sent by James Carruthers of the South County Museum dated May 4 to the town manager's office, correcting himself and asking for that $6,000, but that number was not put back into the budget. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to fund them as we had done last year. It was just, a simple miscommunication. And again, just an oversight because of the extreme circumstances we're working with right now with this budget and how we do things. That's all.
And pretty much everybody was level funded in the appropriations.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to go over to our moderator and see if we have people who have signed up. I believe that I had on the list for the signups, I had there were 2 people. I think we had Dr. Alba and Stan Wojciechowski, but I don't know if there's others. So why don't we start? If the moderator could tell me who he's got first, and then we can go from there.
First one I have is the Dell D820, which I believe was Stanley the last time.
All right, Stanley, if you could just state your name and address for the record, please. You may have to unmute.
We got another one with a.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Hello, hello, hello,
Hello.
hello, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Stanley, name and address for
My
Terry.
name is Stan Wojciechowski on Boston Road, Narragansett. I commend everyone for being careful on their spending. However, at this time, it seems we got a $7 million surplus, 11.75, but it's over $7 million, I think. I think that is excessive and unnecessary at this time. We have new police buildings, new fire buildings. I don't see any emergencies on the horizon. that we have to have such a large emergency surplus. You know, my neighbors, that I don't see, their housing expenses are killing them. I don't see anyone with a surplus so over 10%. I can't see that. I think we should have a 0% increase in our taxes. That should show concern for the people during this crisis time. At least this 1 year, a 0% increase, and take the number away from the surplus. It will not bother the town and what they're doing. They're doing a fantastic job. They're just going to cut the surplus a little bit. And I understand when it comes to accountants, they like to have the surplus in there so they don't run out of money. However, this is going to be a little mental stress, but I think the mental stress of the lower surplus would be a very kind thing to do for all the residents in Narragansett. And I sincerely hope that you adjust this surplus down to so that we have a 0% this year only. And let's see what happens next year with another virus. How long are we into this? At least let's show concern here. We're in trouble financially. 0 tax entries. Show your concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask the moderator if we have anybody else. I know that Mr. Alba had indicated he was interested.
Mr. Alva's in the room, but he has not raised his hand.
Okay, is there anyone else? I'm gonna ask the moderator who would like to weigh in.
Sue Amoruso.
All right, so please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Susan Amoruso, West Bay Drive. I'd just like to say that I agree with Jesse that this level funding for the library is a little bit misleading, to say the least, because it's not level funded from the previous year. The level funding reflects the cuts that were, put in effect last year with the whole fiasco. And I feel that it needs to be restored to its existing level as it has historically been to the previous years. And especially some people might be saying, oh, we can't afford it. There's so much going on. We need to cut and all this, but the library, the public library, is the last free thing in this country. And especially for people who are in need, it is going to become even more critical for many, many things. And there's a famous journalist, Pete Hamill, and he's the staunch supporter of libraries. And I saw him speak, and he said that his childhood, he says, we were poor, but we were not impoverished. And he said he makes that statement due to the fact that he had a free public library card from the Brooklyn Library. And to this day, and he pulled it out of his pocket. And he said, this is the key. This is the key that allowed me to achieve what I had today. And he said that he made a statement that books equal knowledge and knowledge equals power. And we certainly need more education opportunities, and we need free education opportunities. And the library is an extension of our public library system. And I think that cutting the budget in a community like ours, even though, yes, it's an unusual time, but there's a strong need for a free library that is open and can handle crowds. I don't even know how we're going to do it with, social distancing, with the size restriction of our library, because it's totally inadequate. So I'd like you to think about that and restore the funds. That's my feeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do we have next?
We have Missy Durkin-Kucher.
All right, Missy, name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Missy Kucher, 7 Cathy Street, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Just have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just have a quick question on why you're raising the rental registration.
So the rental register, that came up in the budget work sessions, Missy, and basically the thought process was because a lot of the rental registration, a lot of the rental, there's a lot of costs associated with maintenance of them and police that need to go over, public safety. And so there's been, we actually had budgeted last year to go to 100 on it. But in that discussion, the average is slated for 120. But there was discussion among the council to make that perhaps per bedroom, and then perhaps to have a lower rate for year-round rentals, and that non-year-round rentals would have a higher rate. So that implementation of that, it's an average of 120, but this is the details haven't been worked out of how it'll exactly be implemented.
So if you have a year-round rental, it's going to be less?
Some on the council, including me, have advocated for that, yes.
Because if you own a house and you never had a problem and you're paying this every single year, it's really not fair to the people who have good tenants, control their tenants, or keep paying the town for a service that they're not provided.
Mm-hmm. So what I'll say is when this comes up, I know that some council members have different views on it, but I think when it's come up in terms of the implementation to increase it, there's some discussion of having a two-tier system for year-round versus non-year-round. So when that comes up, we'll be sure to. I know you're not in town hall anymore, but I will make sure to let you know.
No, and I understand that, but I'm just saying I've owned a rental that's year-round for numerous years, probably 15, never had the police there, never had a problem, and I just don't think it's fair to keep raising the rates for a service we're paying for that we don't use.
Right, so this is the average.
I'm paying a fee, but to keep renting it is a little crazy sometimes. And
This was raising the
you guys are
average.
doing, I'm living the dream just like you.
All right, thank you. Who else do we have?
We have Harry Schofield.
All right, Mr. Schofield, name and address for the record.
Yes, Harry Schofield at 9 Atlantic. I just wanted to chime in and encourage all of you again, in view of the budget constraints, to once and for all, this is in direct opposition to the last speaker, once and for all, you need to find and adopt a tax policy that allows you to put a much greater burden of the tax expense on landlords. Landlords in this town have gotten away scot-free for years by being subsidized by residents who do not participate in the rental business, and it is a business. And I'll just say for brevity tonight, once and for all, please find a way to set a tax system in place that significantly burdens landlords. They're running businesses, and these businesses for years have been run at the expense of people who are not in that business, but are forced to subsidize them by paying the same tax rate to support the added expense of doing it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Is there anyone else? I'm going to ask the moderator.
Nobody else.
All right, so I'm going to take a motion. I think we have somebody.
Yep.
All right, state your name and address for the record. Dan's going to.
Lori Kelly, Wildfield Farm Road. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to also go on a little information on the library. In previous years, the budget workshop allowed department heads to present their budgets. This year, we were told that the library, we've heard it 90,000 times, I believe what was said. What's important to know about this is part of the PowerPoint that the department head was not allowed to present was some of the information that was also presented by the school board, which was allowed to present their budget. And that is that 19% of the school children in Narragansett live in poverty. Add to this many elderly on fixed incomes who are also unable to purchase technology and library materials. Now, in the middle of this crisis, we have a great number of restaurant and shop employees who are out of work, or maybe coming back to work now, but have had to cut cable and internet. The library provides services. This is not the time to cut library services. You cut last year on a false promise of, oh, we had an unassigned fund balance. Well, it would have been nice to have that this year. It would be nice to be able to pay our payroll, which once again, the library payroll is $756,000, and you are granting us $400,000. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors about where money should be cut from and how this is level funding for the library. But again, the people of Narragansett, over 7,000 people have library cards. They know what is really going on here. And it is unfair that this comment was not allowed to be made in public workshop. So it's being forced to be made today. We ask again that you reinstate the library's budget, because in this type of environment, recessions and people out of work, we need these services to be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. We had heard that many times, but if you recall, when the four council members all had discussed the library before I weighed in, I asked the director of the library if she wanted to add anything, and that was later in the evening. So there was an opportunity if she had wanted to give that presentation. You can review the tape and look at that. Is there anyone else from the public?
Nobody else from the public.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All in favor? We're going to start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion to close the public hearing, approved 5-0. And so now we're going to look at, so we have two agenda items related to the budget. And if we, when we get to them, we're going to be, we will likely be amending them based on the recommendations from the town staff. So the town staff had recommendations regarding this loss. We're losing $376,296 in hotel and meal tax, and that's reflected in the operating budget, I believe on page 2 of the operating budget. And to make up for that, there's basically 7 things that have been recommended. First was a health and dental decrease across all departments of $57,761, revaluation sinking fund at $75,000, a half of an FTE in police for $50,000, a DPW truck driver, $92,800, and then a $41,734 reduction from Parks and Rec or from contingency. And then in capital, we had fire capital, $30,000, building rehab, $10,000 communications upgrade, and radios for the police in capital at $19,000. So basically, I'm just going to have a brief discussion here before we bring up the items as the closure of the public hearing. Just any comments on where we are right now. So I'm going to start with Mr. Lima.
So as Chris mentioned with this is a projection from the state. This isn't a final. So again, you heard Stanley mention fund balance. We may be digging into that fund balance through the course of the year because we still are in uncharted waters. We don't know how much more cuts we're going to take. We don't know what's ahead of us. We have the fall of the year coming in. We can't predict what's going on there. And, you know, in this town, we do have people. We have residents who, again, their salaries were cut. Some were furloughed. They're going through tough times. And I certainly don't want to lose any family that's living in Narragansett because they can't afford to live here. And as far as business goes, the same conditions. We can't afford to lose another business in this town. We need to support the businesses. We need to help support the people that live here. Whatever steps we have to take, we have to sit down and discuss it. It's just not a magic wand that we're going to wave and automatically this one gets this and this one gets that. There's a lot ahead of us. So the cuts that were made tonight by the town manager and Chris that went back to the department heads, I appreciate them once again cutting. I want people out there to know that 90% of the budget cuts that were cut from the departments of Narragansett, a lot of those were need items. They were items that were kicked down the road for years. And as people will comment, social media or at the council meeting, you know how much this is costing the town, how much that. When we cut $2 million out of this budget, if you bring that back next year, there's a cost on top of that, that it's not going to be $2 million to bring back those particular items that were cut. It'll be a lot more. It could be 3%, it could be 8%, it could be 15%. So nobody likes to cut. Cuts were made. I heard about the cuts from the library. I also want people to understand, library left $181,000 on the table from OLIS. This council and members of our town manager and staff tried to talk to OLIS and seeing if we could get fund balance into our account, give it back, and get $181,000 to them. They refused. Now I heard, oh, who can be trusted? Well, if you can't trust the town manager and the finance director, then lock the doors and everybody go home. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Okay, okay, I had to bring up the library, huh? Okay, I think the trust wasn't the town manager and the finance department. I think the trust was not trusting this sitting council. Well, let's put that aside for now.
None of us signed the checks, Patrick. My name's not on a check either.
Yeah, well, you vote to sign the checks.
Yeah.
So let's just put that aside for now. As far as the 2.8 hole in the budget that's been brought up continuously was the purchase of the Belmont building for the movement of the old library to that building. If we move forward with the RFP, we would have that bond money and reimbursement from OLIS up to 50%. And those monies would have been put back into our reserve. So this is a situation that was created by this council, and it's unfortunate. As far as the rental registration, I'd like to see, I know they want to get the average of 120, but I think we should go by the bedroom. That way there, a 5-bedroom house would pay more than a 2-bedroom apartment, which is smaller. 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3 bedrooms are normally resided by local residents. The 40,000 plus for the veterans, I think we should take out of the contingency fund. That park has been put on hold. They have done some stuff, but we need to get that finished for respect of our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pugh.
Thanks. Before I forget, I just want to mention this before I forget to bring it up. There was a request from Narrow River Preservation Association for $1,950. I know we all received a few emails about that. I can't find it in the budget. Jim or Chris, do you guys know if that's in there and I'm missing it, or did that not make it in?
What was that from again?
NRPA, it's Narrow River Preservation Association.
I don't see it in the appropriations.
Yeah, it's not in there.
Not in there.
Was that a request that I forwarded to you guys from them?
Yes.
You may have forwarded it at some point. We got it directly as well. Yeah. That's something I would advocate for. We fund the Historic Society, we do South County Museum and the Narrow River. You know, this group is pretty instrumental in a lot of the activities around that river, that Osprey camera. They do really good work, and it's a small amount. It's under $2,000. I would like to see that added in. If I don't know if anyone else is interested in that as well, but I just want to bring that up. As for these additional cuts that came up today or the last few days, Chris, can you give us details of the health and dental cuts?
Sure. We got the actuals in from the trust. So I had budgeted 8% increase for health. It came in at 5% increase. And then dental, I budgeted at 3% and it went down 2.7%. So those savings added up to approximately the 57,000.
Oh, perfect. So we cut that because we didn't really, it was overestimated anyway. So it's not going to be actually taking any cuts from anyone's service.
Right.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I want to comment on really is the library, obviously. That's always the big one. That's one where if we were having a meeting in person, if this was in the at the town hall, there'd be hundreds of people there, just like last year. So, you know, the fact that this is virtual this year is a little bit of a disservice to, I think, the community in this case, not being able to really show themselves physically, even though I know it's easy to get on Zoom. It's just unfortunate that a single department is being, you know, singled out in this way to take the brunt of to make the sacrifice when it could have been spread out through departments in a more fair way. There's no reason to think that the library budget is more dispensable than any other department's budget. And we disagree on the building. I know this council disagrees on what to do with the building in the future, but it would be nice to see some compromise when it comes to the yearly budget and not make such a drastic decision to hurt one department in this way, especially when we know that their salary is almost twice what we're allocating to the budget. It's just really not realistic. So maybe we could compromise tonight and do some, you know, maybe come in between and do something like 600,000. I would vote for that, even though I still think it's personally not enough. I would support that budget. Otherwise, I'm not going to be voting for this budget as is. So those are my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Ms. Lawler.
Okay, so two topics. As far as the rental registration, I believe that I brought that up, and I think, Matt, you share the same thoughts on this. If we want to try to increase year-round rentals, let's just give a little bit of a break. It's small, but it's something, at least it's a statement. And I know that in the months to come, I think we'll be addressing a rental registration and rental issues as well. As far as the library, you know, I have to comment that as well. It's no longer 2018, it's 2020. We have a pandemic in front of us. As far as I understand, the governor closed down the library March 8th. And the library, as stated tonight, is not a town department. If it was, it'd be reporting into Mr. Tierney, and Mr. Tierney would be able to go in and to make reductions in the budget. And the reason I'm saying this is that the library being closed, why are we still paying them? I mean, they could have been furloughed and collecting money from the state and from the government. But I mean, I think that they've done a great job, and I don't want to say that this is not a needed service. It certainly is. Many people love and enjoy going to the library. And I know that they've done some really creative things as far as bringing books to people or leaving books out for people. But as far as I know, it's closed. So to cut their budget seems to make sense because they won't be using it. They could be having people out on furloughs. I don't know, other than maybe one or two people that are in there, but to give a department, which isn't enough department, full funding for a building that's been closed by the governor, it doesn't make sense to me. From everything she's telling us, when the library will come open, it might be in phase 3. We don't even know that when that is. And what's that going to look like? How far apart are people going to be? What accommodations we need to be made? So I just think that right now with the COVID-19, it's going to change the scope of what a library will look at going in the future. And for the budget year we're looking at right now, it makes sense to cut that budget because how can we use the money when the building's not open? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So this was a general discussion. We're going to move into the items themselves. And we have two final items on the agenda. So first is number 6, a motion to adopt a resolution approving the capital improvement plan. So I'm going to look for a motion on that.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
And is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Okay, so on the capital improvement plan, I'm going to look for an amendment on this. And this would be an amendment to reduce the capital improvement plan by a total of $59,000, specifically $30,000 in building rehab under fire, $10,000 in communications upgrade under fire, and $19,000 in police radios. Is there a motion for that amendment?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion on this. Initially, just going to go through the council quickly. No, not quickly. I can't go as slowly as we want. Mr. Lima, any commentary on that?
So this is what our finance director moved forward with our town manager. They reached out and yes, I am for this.
All right, Mr. Murray.
Okay, that's capital improvement, right?
Correct.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, all set.
Mr. Pugh.
No comment.
Miss Lawler.
I'm all set, and thank you again to the department heads.
All right, so this, Terry, is just going to be on the amendment, and then I'll do on the underlying motion. All in favor of that amendment, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Miss Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. All right, next we have the item number 7. It's going to be a little
Excuse me
more.
just a moment. So that was the vote on the amendment.
Oh, no, you're right. That's the amendment. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. All right. Now on the underlying motion with that amendment. So this is a motion to approve the adopt a resolution approving the capital improvement plan as just amended. Is there any further discussion on that? All right. I think we kind of had it covered. So all in favor now of the underlying amendment, Mr. Lima. Underlying motion. Mr.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Miss Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Right.
Jesse
That's-
Pugh.
Oh, Jesse, I'm sorry, Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Thank you. All right, all in, that's motion approved 5-0. Terry, do you have that?
I do, thank you.
We get to that witching hour sometimes with this too.
Tell me.
Item number 7 is a motion to introduce, read, and accept as the first reading the appropriation ordinance for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Thank you. So on this, we have the amendment. I'm just going to put an amendment out there. If it doesn't work that way, actually, we'll do this first. This part is simple. An amendment, first amendment would be a reduction on page 2 of the operating plan of revenue for the hotel tax from 278,120 to 155,491, and a reduction in the meal tax, also on that same page, from 731,437 to 477,770. Is there a motion? Is there a motion for that amendment?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, so just to lay this out, this is the revenue side of the budget. We got hit with this $376,000 reduction just today. So we're really scrambling in some ways. And this amendment simply reflects these new numbers, right? Is there any commentary on this particular amendment on the revenue side from the council, starting with Mr. Lima?
No comment.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, I'm looking through this list. Do any of these transfers include the library transfer?
This is just revenue on the amendment on revenue on hotel and meal.
Oh, sorry, all set.
Yeah, okay, so this is, okay, Ms. Lawler.
I'm set, thanks, Matt.
I know everyone said, I'll express frustration with the state kind of giving this to us on the eve of our budget vote. It would have been nice to have had it in a better fashion instead of some of the things the state is focusing on at this point during the third month of the pandemic. So I'll put that on the record. All in favor of this amendment? I'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. So that's the first amendment. The second amendment to this, and I'm just going to put it out there, we'll have discussion on it, is going to be the items recommended by Chris Spagnoli and Jim Tierney that we had today. So this would have an amendment to reduce expenses on 5 items. The first being health and dental across all departments for $57,761. The revaluation sinking fund and the tax assessor's budget reduced by $75,000. The police half FTE by $50,000 reduction. The reduction of the DPW truck driver of $92,800, and the reduction of contingency by $41,734. Is there a motion for those reductions?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
All right, is there a second to that?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, so thank you, everyone. I know that's all the recommendations that were put in. Any comments by the council on this particular amendment on those 5 items, starting with Mr. Lima?
No comments.
All right, Mr. Murray.
All set.
Mr. Pugh.
No comment.
Ms. Lawler.
All set.
All right, I just want to thank the department heads for rolling up their sleeves today in a very last minute fashion on this. When I got news of this, it was very disappointing. So thank you to all the department heads, including Chris Spagnoli on this. All right, so I'm going to take a vote on that amendment. This is a vote on the amendment I just described, Terry. So I'm going to start with Mr. Lima. All in favor?
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray?
Patrick Murray, nay.
Mr. Pugh?
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler?
Jill Lawler, aye.
And Matt Mannix, aye. So that motion approved on that amendment is 4-1. Are there any other amendments from council members on the operating budget?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, operating budget.
Yes.
So I'll make an amendment to fund the Narrow River Preservation Association's request for their annual appropriation for $1,950.
All right, is there a second to that amendment?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion. This is for Narrow River Preservation Association. Discussion on that, starting with Mr. Lima.
I have no discussion. They do a great job.
Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I can support this.
Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, just to give a little bit more detail on that. So they get about $1,200 overall from different towns for their water testing program. And they rely on the funding from a bunch of different towns to do that. So we're just part of that whole plan. So that's where that money would go. So other than that, that's all.
Ms. Lawler.
Would this be a first-time funding for us, Jim, Chris, Jesse? I don't think we've funded before, right? Have we?
No, we have not.
Okay. No, I'm in agreement with this. They do a nice job. Clean water is important, so.
I think there was some funding maybe 8 or 9 years ago. It was a source of controversy.
Yeah.
I think what happened in the history on these types of requests is that the the council, the preceding me, really reduced a lot of these discretionary requests to organizations like Johnny Cake Center and Welcome House, and really weren't giving them to groups that were not really in kind of, for lack of a better word, dealing with hunger or homelessness or people's basic needs. So because that discretionary line item in the early 2010s was quite high. So all right, so all in favor of this amendment, we'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Do we need to take public comment when we do the amendments or not? If there, I don't.
Yeah, we're not having any hands raised, so yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yep, aye. Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, no. Motion approved for that amendment 4-1. Is there any other amendments to the budget?
Yep, I have another one. So I'll just throw this out there, see if we get any discussion, maybe a little traction on it. I just want to remind everyone that we have brought up the fact that we respect the recommendations of the town manager and the finance director when it comes to their recommendations for cuts and for general budget proposals. They did recommend $841,000 for the library. That was the town manager and the finance director's proposed budget. So the council would be going against that recommendation. With that said, I know we have the restraints this year. So I'm just gonna throw out a proposal for a budget of $600,000 for the library. It's not the 841, but it's not the 400. It's right in the middle. So I'll make an amendment to fund the library transfer for $600,000 for this fiscal year.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll give him a second. Let's vote on it.
All right. Well, at first I'll just say comments. We'll go down the line, start with Mr. Lima.
So does the town manager actually get involved with yes or no on their budget? They put their budget in. I mean, Jim, do you actually have a yes or no answer? Or do you sit down with them at any point to discuss what to cut out of their budget?
I've had discussions, with them about their budget, but as town manager, as you know, I don't have the authority to govern their operations, the hiring, firing programs that they have.
So whatever they put in goes anyway, whether you have questions or anything about the budget to begin with.
Yeah, I did have questions initially. I wanted to learn their system, how they had it set up. And when the budget was forwarded, as I've said, I think to a few of you, that they're a body, the library board is appointed by the council as a body, and we just simply give them an appropriation to spend. And I forwarded the budget to the council for consideration on that, as they do with the other budgets for other town departments.
Okay, I'm all set now.
All right, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm all set. Let's just get this voted on. All set.
All right, Mr. Pugh.
I already said what I had to say.
All right, Ms. Lawler.
I have no further comment.
All right, great. Are there comments? Oh, there's a couple of comments from the public. So I'm gonna ask the moderator to have those people speak on this item.
First one is Stanley Wojciechowski.
All right, Stan, could you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Stan Wojciechowski, Boston Neck Road, Narragansett. You know, I hear that the virus may come back again. We're going to have this virus, I think. We're not going to get a solution. We're going to have this virus the whole year. Therefore, we can't have gatherings at the library. Never mind 6 feet. We just don't have any gatherings there for the rest of the year. Therefore, for sure, we've got to give the furlough to people. It has to be done. Any minimum distribution of books or tapes or anything like that, that's fine. But I'm sure you don't need the whole staff there Therefore, we shall not overfund them, if you will. So I'd say stay where it is, if not less. Well, I'd like to have the exact calculation, what do you need, 3 employees maybe? Maybe. Right now I see books out there for free and very few people are taking all those books. So there's no book desire that I see. What I see in the library is events, and I don't see events happening. It doesn't look like it. So we're shut down for an extended period of time until we come back. We've got to take those funds and put them back in the budgets. If anything, let's reduce the increase in our tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wojciechowski. The second person, ask the moderator to identify the second person.
Yeah, Margaret Rogers.
All right, name and address for the record, please.
Good evening again, Margaret Rogers, 68 Earls Court. So I just wanted to let all my fellow residents know that I'm so proud that our library has the #1 circulation throughout our state of Rhode Island during the pandemic. That's really remarkable in a town of this size. It will never receive any commendation from the 3 library opponents in our council. So that's something that we should celebrate. And it's something that should really weigh into your decision-making here on the amendment offered by Councilor Pugh. I know it won't, because I know you've dug in as library opponents, and that is what you will be running for in the upcoming election. Once again, the 3 of you will be running as library opponents. We get it, but please know we understand that you're wrong, because our library circulation is a data point that cannot be contested. We have the highest circulation in the state of Rhode Island during COVID-19. We have the highest library circulation during COVID-19. And I support Mr. Pugh's amendment wholeheartedly. Thank you.
All right, great. So I'm going to go down the council for to call the vote on this amendment for the allocation to the library to change that to 600,000. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, no.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye. Can support this.
Mr. Pugh.
Sorry about that. Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, nay.
Matt Mannix, no. Motion fails 2-3. Are there any additional amendments that people would like to put forward? All right, there's one thing that I've been looking at. We have a fund balance of $7,163,000. If we flattened that to $7 million, we would still be in the 10 to 16% limit, and we would reduce our overall tax increase to below 2% on the taxpayers. As you know, I've been trying to squeeze whatever I can out of this budget. So if there's a motion to allocate $163,000 from the fund balance to the taxpayers to reduce that, I'll see if there's a motion out there for that. All right, hearing none, then we will move on to the underlying budget with the amendments that we have. I just, for our purposes, Terry, the original motion was made by Jill and seconded by Ricky. And I, according to my notes, but I want to make sure I'm correct here, I have 3 amendments. Is that what you have?
Well, let's see, that were successful. Let me see, 1, 2, 3. That is correct, 3 successful. And I just need a clarification myself. I don't know if you're planning on restating them, but I need a clarification on the second amendment.
Okay, so the first amendment was on revenue, so you have that.
I do.
Correct. Third amendment was on NRPA, you have that.
Yes.
All right, the middle amendment essentially had 5 items. It was 57,761 across health and dental, 75,000 for revaluation sinking fund, 50,000 for police, half FTE, DPW truck driver, 92,800, and contingency reduction of 41,734.
Excuse me, Matt.
Yes.
The Narrow River, where would you like me to take that fund from, those funds?
That goes in, oh, we have to find a home, yeah.
Contingency.
There you go.
So, yeah. All right, so let's, Terry, do you need a motion to that effect? Or just,
A motion would be preferable.
all right, so we're gonna do a 4th amendment. And this would be the now NRPA allocation will come out, will reduce contingency by 1950. Who wants to make that motion?
I'll make that. Okay, I'll second it.
All right, and we'll just go down the line on that. This is kind of the substance of this has been discussed. Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jesse?
Jesse.
No, Jesse, sorry.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, no. Motion approved 4-1. All right, so Terry, do you now have,
I believe so. I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't missed anything with regard to the Veterans Park Memorial.
that's the contingency that's handled, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you. Thank you.
We've got the, okay, so again, you have 4 amendments now. The first on revenue, second on the operating, 5 operating items, the third on Narrow River Preservation increase, and the 4th on the source of Narrow River Preservation.
Correct.
All right, so now the motion with those amendments for the first reading of the appropriation ordinance. This is now the underlying motion we're going to be voting on. So this is discussion on the budget with those 4 amendments. Any final comments from council members on this first reading? Mr. Lima.
No comments, Matt.
Okay, great. Mr. Murray.
All set.
Mr. Pugh.
So sorry, are we doing?
This is the this is the budget now with all the amendments.
All right, so this is the full vote. I do want to just mention that it's interesting that you brought up that that motion to take 170,000 or whatever it was, 100 and something thousand out of the contingency to apply to this year's tax levy. So that would have been about, I don't know, 3 to 4 cents on the mill rate for residents. So an average resident, it would save them $15 for the year, maybe $20 for the year. So it's $1 or $1.50 a month is what that would have done. So you're willing to take out of the contingency that amount of money to save people $1.50 a month, when that money could go to the library to actually pay for the employees of the library. But really, that's not what it's about. It's just a political move to act like you want to lower taxes a little bit. Basically $1.50 a month. So yeah, anyway, a little kind of a noteworthy thing, but as for the budget, no other comments.
Miss Lawler.
No comments, Matt.
It's very important, I think, for us to look everywhere we can to make reductions. My goal was to get it as low as possible. That's what I've done every budget since I've been elected. I think that's our #1 job as council members. #1 job as council members to keep taxes as low as possible and get out of people's way. And I think private sector principles, we are trying so hard to implement, but we have public sector unions. The library, right, could institute some of those private sector principles. I don't think people need to be furloughed, but 80% salary, 75% salary, that's going on in the private sector. That's going on in the real world. That happens when times are tough, right? And that is something that could be implemented. our union negotiations are actually stalled right now because we're not able to meet, because we'd be in the process of doing those right now. There's going to be, I hope there are hard conversations that are had with the unions, but right now we don't have the ability to just say we're going to reduce everyone's salary 8%, okay, because it would violate union contracts. So I'm disappointed that we didn't see in this an embrace of those kind of principles. I also need to talk about the comments about things being right and wrong. It's a difference of opinion. People have different opinions about where the library should go. They have different opinions about whether taxes should be increased or not. I think putting these things in right and wrong terms is very dangerous in a democratic society, because what happens is then a person is morally bankrupt if they're not on your side. And we've seen that go on. We've seen vicious attacks on people and their character because they have a certain point of view. And it's very disappointing that I've seen that in these last 2 years on the council. I've been very disappointed by it. And I think we need to remove the rhetoric of right and wrong. There are moral issues out there. There are moral issues, but they're really not debated at a town council level. Right? Moral issues, there are big moral issues that this nation has to face, but the things that we're dealing with, to put them in such stark moral terms, I think is very dangerous. And I just want to caution that we don't do that time and again, because it goes down a path of personal attacks and looking at somebody not as somebody you disagree with, but somebody who needs to be destroyed, and that's not healthy for democracy. So, all in favor of?
I just want to say one more thing. You brought it up in a democratic society. In a democratic society, when during a vote for a bond and 68% of the people vote to move forward with the purchase of this building and move the library over there, and we would refill the coffers with that 2.4 million, and we wouldn't be in this situation if we just followed the moral compass of our constituents. Thank you.
Patrick, I'm just going to note on that front, though, if you look at the road bond and the third phase of it and the money that we don't have now, which had over 80% approval 4 years before the library bond, right? That may not happen the third phase, because then that might be money for it. So that is a conversation that's had by the 5 people on the council, and it's not an automatic. In any case, 82% in that third phase may not happen. Our bond council may say that that can't happen. So yes, when the people weigh in, but then there's also the job of the council to look at the fiscal aspect of it and what's actually going on in the ground. So, all right, I'm gonna go down. All in favor with this is for the first reading on the budget with those 4 amendments. Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Trustee Pugh, no.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 4-1. Second reading will be on June 15th. All right, finally, we have our open forum public comment section. I ask that people who talk during public comment are respectful and keep their comments succinct. We're going to have our moderator call on the people who have come forward. I have 3 names that had been that had contacted the town clerk before. They were Stanley Wojciechowski, Meg Rogers, and Lori Kelly. So go ahead, Mr. Collins.
First one is Stanley Wojciechowski.
All right, name and address, please, for the record.
Stan Wojciechowski, Bonnie Shores, on the Boston Neck Road. First, I want to thank you, Councilman Mannix. You have $7 million as a surplus, and you couldn't get others to just take away $163,000. That to me, that really hurt. $7 million you got sitting there, and you couldn't just take away a little bit, just to show that you have a little extra thinking going on for the taxpayer here. So that bothered me. But however, I really wanted to talk about the virus again. We have options here in Narragansett. It's very unique compared to anyone else in the state. We can drive 4 minutes and 33 seconds So the Peacedale Library, which is a very large facility with high ceilings and offers a very similar situation as ours does. So we have alternatives here that wouldn't cost us 1 cent, not 1 penny. South Kingston pays for that one. It wouldn't cost us anything to go to that Peacedale Library. I've been there. I've been to some of their events. And of course, I'm sure they copied the Narragansett idea. Narragansett #1 in proposing all these events and all these unique ideas. I understand that. But we have the option to go without spending any money to another facility. Now, if we want a modern facility with a lot of tables and computers, we have URI. Unbelievable large facility. They've taken out many books. Stacks of books have been gone from that facility compared to when I went there. And it's open space with tables and people are doing their thing. The new idea is not books. Again, sitting down with the computer at the tables and doing what they have to. But we do have options available here. It's not like if you don't have this mansion library in the center of town, we're going to be in trouble. Not necessarily. We still have North Kingstown, which has a mansion type facility, and I don't see that thing full when I go by there. We have all these options that are right out there. Therefore, we don't have to spend the dollars. Now, I'm not saying to shut down what we have. What we have is a very nice building and very good people. I'd like to keep it just as it is. And not have to spend $6 or $10 million to change it to something we don't need. And if we go to the Belmont building and have to maintain 6 feet, we're not going to be able to increase the amount of people going in there. I doubt it very much. And when this virus is gone, I expect another one next year. Who knows when this is going to stop? But until we know this virus situation is really fixed, we have to stop everything, cease and desist. No building activity for a facility that could be obsolete, unusable, and not give us the added capacity that we think we're going to get because of viruses.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you. Does the moderator have anyone else?
Nobody else has their hand raised.
Oh, I see a name.
Yep, just came up. Laura Kelly.
All right, name and address for the record.
Lori Kelly, 25 Wildfield Farm Road. Once again, just to reiterate, comparing us to other libraries is you can't do that without actually having your facts straight. I know at one of the budget hearings, someone went on and on about the South Kingstown librarian making less money with three years of service. She also only works 35 hours a week. So again, a false comparison. South Kingstown was closed during the pandemic. And Jill, I don't know what your definition of closed is. If we're closed, the schools are closed. And I don't see anyone cutting the school budgets or laying off teachers or telling them to be furloughed because they're still teaching and we are still running a library. And South Kingstown during the pandemic was sending people to other libraries because it wasn't open. Again, you know, as Jesse said so eloquently, you could disagree on the building, but to slash our budget, to say over and over again, we are not part of the town, to ask us to take small business loans, and no one up there can correct you and say, we are not a small business, we are not a charitable organization, we cannot file for PPP, but everyone goes on without comment. So let me say it again, we are part of the town. We have people in the town pension plan. We should be respected, and it should not be the women of the library who are asked to take a 70% salary cut just because we're not in a union. And that's a new one of Matt's ideas. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
That's it.
All right, our next item is a motion to retire to executive session of the town council in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-4 and 42-46-5 subsection A. Litigation in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5 subsection A2. Bonanno v. Mannix et al., Washington County 2019-0137. Love Your Library et al. Versus Mannix et al., Washington County 2019-495. GP Peer Retail LLC versus Narragansett et al., Washington County 2019-499. Acquisition, lease, or disposition of real property in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5, subsection A5, 29 Pier Marketplace. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor? It's a roll call vote on this, as you know, all in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Jill
Jill,
Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.